You know, I don't mean to brag, but I consider myself pretty lucky. I'm fortunate enough to have an entire room dedicated to all my paraphernalia and an amazing wife that's okay with it, despite having no interest in gaming herself. So much love and respect to her, she rules. Compared to a lot of other collectors and YouTubers though, my setup is pretty modest. I don't really consider myself a collector though, I'm more of an enthusiast. That being said, I've been a purveyor of video game related stuff on and off since I was 11, but I'd say it's really only been in the past 5 or 6 years that I've started to build up the number of consoles and games that I own. Now, the last time that I did an office tour was about 2 years ago, and since then I've swapped rooms and there's been a lot of new additions and changes. I got new consoles, new games, new equipment, new furniture, and something else really rad that I'm going to make you wait until the end of the video for. Okay, it's this, but we'll cover it in more detail later on. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about and many things to show you, so in the words of Mr. Jackson,
hold on to your butts.
This is the entirety of my games collection, just about. There's a few other games around the room which we'll get to, but this is where most of it lives. You can see that it's really not that big, and this is mainly because of 2 reasons. The first is money. Retro gaming, if you didn't know, can be really expensive. The second reason is that I only collect stuff that I intend on playing. There's very little in my collection that is simply ornamental, or that I'm holding onto to sell later. Aside from this, obviously. Now that doesn't mean that I don't look after my stuff or that I collect items that are in bad shape. I definitely take pride in my shit looking crisp, but if I want to play something, I'm going to play it. Take this copy of Neo Geo Battle Collection that I paid way too much for and was still in the factory seal when I got it. Incidentally, that's what happens when I'm left unattended with a bottle of red in the eBay app, but I digress. I could have left it in the wrapping and it would probably be worth a lot more, but then I'd miss out on stuff like this. I even play the games from the few press kits that I own, although I made a custom case for my copy of Until Dawn because, as you'll see later on, the tin it came in isn't the most practical. Now I used to have all of my games in drawers with only the current gen stuff out on a shelf, and this was a really bad system because I'd forget about things that I had all the time, and because of that there's a ton of games I haven't played like Alien vs Predator Extinction and Resident Evil on the GameCube. Speaking of Nintendo, my collection of Nintendo games is pretty damn small, which is kind of ironic seeing as I have more Nintendo systems than any other platform. In my defense, I only started collecting Super Nintendo stuff not that long ago, and this is now the 3rd time I've had an N64 collection. I actually got given the GameCube and most of the games I have for it. The only thing I bought for it is Rogue Squadron, but it's an awesome little system and I definitely intend on collecting more for it. I do plan on fleshing out my SNES and N64 libraries too, but I've never been much of a fan of Nintendo's core titles like Zelda or the Mario games outside of Mario Kart. I find that I go in and out of phases of collecting. It usually starts with me wanting to play a particular game for whatever reason, and my interest in that platform tends to snowball afterwards. So for example, I got a component cable for my Mega Drive recently, and now I have this itch to start seeking out more games from my childhood. Moving on, these are the headphones that I'm currently using. I have a pair of Audio-Technica AR5BTs, which are wireless, and these are what I use for work and also for traveling. I've got a pair of AKG K7Xs for when I listen to music, and then I've got a pair of Audio-Technica ATH M20Xs for video editing. I like having separate headphones for specific purposes because it's really hard to find one pair that does everything well. So for example, the AKGs blow the other 2 out of the water for listening to music, but they're too big for on the go and they're really not that great for editing audio. For gaming, I've been using the Astro A50s for about 4 years now, and they really are an excellent headset. Actually, a cool story about these, the headband bridge snapped not that long ago, and when I got in touch with Astro to find out where I could get a replacement, they simply shipped me the part, all the way from the States to Australia mind you, for free. Now that's what I call kick-ass service. Okay, so this here is the machine I watch all the porn on. It's also where I occasionally edit videos for YouTube. I got it 3 years ago, I want to say. It's an Imac i5 with 16GB of RAM and a 1TB Fusion drive. The i7 would have arguably been better for editing videos, but it was substantially more expensive because Apple. So I went with the i5 with more RAM instead. It's perfect for what I need, it renders videos super quick, and the big 5K screen is super nice for doing graphic work. This is the mic I use. It's an Audio-Technica AT2020 USB Plus, which I've been really happy with. It might seem like I'm sponsored by Audio-Technica, but I bought all of this equipment with my own money because I just really like their products. That being said, Audio-Technica, if you're listening, call me. This is where the internet comes in and is directed out to all the various internet-related devices. I have a pretty decent connection for Australia. It's what's called the National Broadband Network, or NBN for short, and I normally get something like 90 down and 30 to 40 up pretty consistently. The up speed has definitely been a real godsend because YouTube videos now upload in minutes instead of the hours it used to take. You might be wondering why everything is wide and why I don't just use Wi-Fi. Well, firstly speed, but also I'm just being cautious about the amount of Wi-Fi exposure my family is being subjected to. There isn't a great deal of research on the long-term effects of Wi-Fi exposure, but some countries like France and Russia have banned it in schools, so I figure you can't be too careful when kids are involved. Now, an important part of my setup is having all my consoles easily accessible and ready to go. It's far from a perfect setup, you can probably see all the wires in the back, but with minimal hassle I can quickly connect any of my systems via a switch box and play a game. If you have any experience with older consoles, you'll know that achieving this is way easier said than done. Even when you think your setup is perfect, you'll inevitably end up twisted in some uncomfortable position behind the TV with your phone torch in your mouth trying to rewire something. This is particularly true when you have friends round, and my setup is no different. I don't know what it is about having an audience, but my shit always decides to stop working. I'm sure that it has nothing to do with the beer that's also present on those occasions, but in general I'd say that 8 or 9 times out of 10 I can play any of these systems without much trouble. Now, you're probably wondering why I have a SNES Classic as well as the original system. Well, I prefer to play on the OG hardware if I can. I never really got into emulation. I mean, it's great for games that never got a home release or are difficult to find, but nothing beats the real thing. I figure the SNES Classic is a bit of a compromise because although it's emulation, it is an official Nintendo product and it has games like Mario Kart and Super Metroid, which can be kind of expensive to buy on cartridge. It also has Star Fox 2, which isn't a great game, but it's kind of a cool piece of gaming history. Now, all of these consoles run into a switch box and then into an HDMI upscaler. The only one that doesn't is the PS2 because it uses component cable and I can run that directly into the Elgato. One day I'd like to have all of these systems using either component cables or some kind of HDMI converter, but that equipment can get pretty pricey. I recently dropped $130 on a component cable for my Mega Drive, and while the results are amazing, when you multiply that cost by 4 or 5 times, it definitely puts things into perspective. Obviously I have a PSVR 2. I don't actually use it anywhere near as much as I thought I might. To be honest, it's a bit of a pain in the ass because you have to pull out all the cables, make sure the camera is in the right position, make sure the room is well lit, make sure the controllers have charge, make sure you've got enough room, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's awesome, but there's also quite a few games that make me feel really sick, like Dirt Rally for example. It looks incredible, but I can't play it for more than 5 minutes without feeling fucking terrible. I mainly use it to play Superhot, although I really enjoyed the Moss demo, so I might get that at some point too. On top of these consoles, I have 2 press kits in these display cases so I can bathe in their awesomeness. The one on the left is the Uncharted Collection, which has this sweet bullet-shaped USB stick, and the other one is the Until Dawn press kit I spoke about earlier. So this is where all my gaming is done. This is a 40-inch Toshiba LCD, which I've had for almost 10 years now. I actually think it might need replacing soon because the remote doesn't work and sometimes it can be a real pain to turn on. I honestly don't know what I'd replace it with though. I was thinking that a sweet gaming monitor might be the way to go, but that isn't a great option for when I have friends round. This is a PS4 Pro, which I upgraded to during the last Black Friday sale. My TV isn't 4K or HDR, but I wanted to upgrade for the generally higher resolutions, faster loading times, better PSVR performance, and because my old PS4 was extraordinarily loud. Seriously, I feared for my safety when playing God of War it made that much noise. Also, I know it's a small thing, but having an extra USB port on the back is extremely handy. Underneath I have my Mega Drive, and next to that is some last gen systems. The PS3 currently doesn't read discs and also kind of smells pretty weird when it's turned on. I don't know, I need to sort that out at some stage, but I actually play these systems the least out of everything that I own. This is where I sit and do all of my gaming. It's a couch, it's pretty comfy, not much more I can say about that. Now, this is what I was saving till last, and it's something that I only recently inherited. Originally it had glass panels on the side and back, and it also had a door on the front which locked, but I decided to strip it back to just the shelves. I got it mainly because I needed somewhere to put my Lego stuff, but there was plenty of spare space, so I'm using it to display some of the other items in my collection which are particularly special to me. Some of the standouts are this custom TIE Fighter mock. It was a real nightmare to source all the parts for, and I think altogether it probably set me back about $200. It's easily the best looking LEGO TIE Fighter I've seen though, and it was a lot of fun to build, so I'm pretty happy with the end result. I'm actually in the process of building a custom stand for it, but it's been a really long time since I built anything out of Lego that I didn't have instructions for, so progress has been slow at best. These two books on game art are another standout in this display. This one is for the character art in the Street Fighter games, and the other one is a visual history of Neo Geo stuff. Really rad books if you're into either of those topics, although I will say that they're very dangerous things to have around because they essentially act as catalogues. Just be careful with these because one too many wines and you'll be buying overpriced PS2 games from Sweden in no time. I'm not 100% sure this is how the layout of items will stay. The books, for example, are kind of lost down there, but otherwise I think this display turned out really well. It also doubles as a pretty sweet lamp. Alrighty, so that's my gaming lair. I've stuck a bunch of links in the description for all the various items I've covered, but if I've missed something, just hit me up in the comments. Remember to like, dislike, subscribe and all that shit, but otherwise keep it real.